Wow, it's great to see everyone today. Thanks for joining us. Just give it 10 more seconds and we'll get started. All right. Welcome to Featured Pros Live. We're so happy that you could join us today. Before we get started, just a few quick housekeeping notes. This session is being recorded and we'll be sending the notes and the recording tomorrow morning. So you'll be able to revisit anything you want or share it with your colleagues who were not able to attend live. We also encourage your questions throughout the session, so please drop them directly into the chat and we'll keep an eye on the chat and respond to them as we go along, with time set aside toward the end for Q&A as well. And on the Lit Software side, I'm Hillary Hames. I'm the Vice President of Enterprise Relationships. I work with law firms, in-house counsel, and government entities as they evaluate and adopt our software, making sure the buying process is smooth, and more importantly, that the trial teams are actually getting better outcomes once they're up and running. And I'm joined by Andrea Burton, our Chief Customer Officer. Andrea leads customer success, oversees education and training, and manages enterprise onboarding. She also works closely with our product team to ensure Lit Suite reflects how litigation really works in the real world. And of course, last but not least, Tara Cheever, our co-founder. Tara will be monitoring the chat and taking questions as they come in, so please send those again our way. Our guest today is Tom Vidal, a partner at Pryor Cashman in Los Angeles, and a seasoned trial lawyer who regularly handles high-stakes litigation in state and federal courts, as well as arbitrations. His practice spans media and entertainment, intellectual property, and technology disputes, often involving complex facts and voluminous records. Tom is known for his disciplined trial preparation, his ability to present evidence clearly and persuasively, keeping judges and juries focused on the right story and not the mechanics. We're excited to have him walk us through how he actually prepares for trial and presents cases in the courtroom and beyond. Welcome to Featured Pros Live. Today is going to be a little bit different in the best way. Tom is going to share his screen exactly like he would in a remote deposition. So what you'll see is not a polished demo, but a real working setup, how he actually organizes, prepares, and presents cases in real life. Tom, thanks again for being here.
You're very welcome. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, let's start with how all this began. So before we get into our technology, can you give everyone a quick overview of your practice and the kinds of cases you typically take to trial?
Sure. My practice generally, if you wanted to use one little phrase to describe it, are control disputes. High stakes control disputes where governance or ownership of something has broken apart. So whether that's earn-out disputes after a merger, a CEO got pushed out of the company or stripped of their stock. And because of that focus on structural types of cases, the industries vary widely. I have entertainment cases, I have capital markets cases, all of them, or this case that you talked about in the introduction to the webinar, my Applestein case, that was an elder abuse and fraud case, but all similarly structured cases.
And you've told us about the first time you used TrialPad in a courtroom against an opponent using an Elmo document camera. So before we talk about how that changed your practice, could you show us what your TrialPad environment actually looks like today?
Sure. We'll look at a few cases throughout a few case files in TrialPad today. So I'm going to open with one. I don't know how familiar everybody is with TrialPad, but the TrialPad UI, this is what it looks like when I open my cases. The template, I have a template set of folders that I use for every case that I open. They're a little bit different. I'll show you a more fleshed out version in a moment. But all of the documents that come into the case will come into this Documents tab. So these are your clean documents that you might have, right? Anything that you've imported is here, and it will always stay a clean document. When you move it to your Key Docs tab, that's where you can use the document in in trial or in depositions or whatever you're going to do. So here we have key docs that might have notes in them and the other things. But this is what my setup looks like. I have my template set of folders have what I call my trial notebook. So it's my digital version of the trial notebook, as well as trial exhibits, finder. And that may sound confusing to use the term trial exhibits because I use trial pad, doc review pad, transcript pad throughout the entire life of a case. But I name the folders this way, not because I assume every case is going to trial, but because the way I prepare my cases, I assume that they are going to trial and I work them up that way. And I start thinking about what might be trial exhibits as we proceed through the case.
And as you open this up, what's different between this and how you used to prep when everything lived in paper?
So when everything lived in paper, I did what a lot of people probably do was I used 3-ring binders for everything. So my binder system was also structured in a certain way. I had here, and I'll show you from here because you'll be able to see exactly what my binder setup looked like. I had a tab in my binder called the plan. I had a tab called summary. I have a tab called pretrial orders that might have, standing orders that the judge might have, orders granting pro hoc vice status, anything that governs the organization of the trial and trial calendaring goes there. My witness file is broken up in a very specific way. I break it up between a folder with our witnesses, the other side's witnesses, our experts and their experts. And we also have third-party witnesses. Those are people that are witnesses in a case that might not have any impact on my case whatsoever. Maybe they're indemnity parties or they've got something to do with other claims in the case. So I track those as third-party witnesses. I don't do a folder.
What's the difference between docs and key docs?
In my usage, or just in the software itself?
In the software itself.
So the documents in this document tab, everything that you see here is a clean document. This is as if you had a separate spare clean copy that somebody gave you. In fact, I can mark on this document, and if I switch to it, move to something else, that what I had marked up on that document is now gone. Sorry, I moved out of that folder already, so you can't really see it, but here, we are in pretrial orders.
Yeah, and where are you tending to back these documents up? Are they in the cloud as well as the iPad, or where's your document system?
So my firm has a document management system. We use iManage for all our documents. So we keep everything in iManage. I have for my trial pad, doc review pad, anything in the lit suite, I have those in 2 places. I keep them, I like to use them best on iCloud, but I often will just move them to on my iPad when I'm at a place where Wi-Fi or cell service might be sketchy. So I make sure that I have a local close copy to me, and I just make sure that one gets updated from time to time or saved back to iCloud when I get a chance. But I prefer to work from the iCloud version because then if I'm on my Mac or someplace else, I can open up the same case files.
And are you setting the folders up in Doc Review Pad first and then sending those to Trial Pad, or are they both set up in each app?
That's a very good question. So whenever I get a case, I always start with Doc Review. I'll open up case files in Doc Review Pad, Trial Pad, and now Timeline Pad and Transcript Pad. But early on, most of my work is going into Doc Review Pad. So any documents, so let's say a client sent me an email that had 15 documents in it. All of those will get saved into Doc Review Pad, saved in our document management system, of course, at the office, and then saved into Doc Review Pad, where I will put what I call a fake bait stamped number on it. I call it review and put a dash box around it. And any document that I've reviewed gets marked that way. And then if later on we're going to produce it in the case, it'll get bait stamped with the real bait stamp number.
And every potential piece of evidence goes into Trial Pad, and then you organize around witnesses?
That's exactly right. So what I'll do from Doc Review Pad is I'll obviously review the documents. I may issue code them. And, early on in a case, let's start from that standpoint. Early on in the case, we might not know what the claims are going to be. If we're plaintiff or if we're the defendant, we don't know what our defenses are. So they get marked more for things like who the witnesses are. So I'll add issue codes And my issue codes, we'll look at some of these when we get into transcript pad. It'll be easier to show there, but I use the same issue codes across. So if there's a document that might be about or authored by a person, I add an issue code for that person. Then I can pull up all those documents. If I'm doing, for example, a deposition of that particular person, or that person is somebody who needs to be the subject of, questioning at the deposition, I can export a batch of documents that have been coded with that person's name on it and either use it for their deposition or use it to refer to through the deposition or whatever the case might be. So all of that goes into TrialPad.
So as your outline evolves, the document organization evolves with it. How does this change your confidence going into a live exam?
Well, one of the things, so it makes my confidence, it's increases my confidence greatly. And we'll take a look when you're ready. I'll show you how I do it. I'll use a cross-examination at trial, but it works the same way for a deposition. Well, mostly the same way. You'll see how I organize it. But it's fantastic for a couple of reasons. One, it's so much more convenient dealing with documents on PDF and electronically. It's easier to sort things around. For example, if I change my outline around, I can easily move things around. Here, you know what? I can show you with this. I keep forgetting I have it on screen right now. Let's take a look at a trial cross-examination. This was an actual trial. The documents that I'm going to show you were showed to the jury, so I'm not divulging anything that wasn't secret. This case that you're looking at here involved a motion picture copyright infringement case and some false advertising claims. So let's say now this was for a cross-examination. For a deposition outline, the slight difference would be I'd probably have these categories numbered perhaps in a certain way. But I use, if you can see on my screen, there's this custom button. And what I'll do is I can organize these folders, no matter how they're spelled, I can order them however I want, so I can organize the way that the deposition is going to go. And there's a button here that allows you to just quickly move things up and down wherever you might want it, and then work from there. And you can always go back to the regular alphabetical sort order by using name. And becoming comfortable with those tabs will make your use of Lit Suite and these kinds of organizational tools really powerful. Because, let's say you're prepping, you had this organization in mind. When you organized it, everything seems like it fits, but maybe you have voluminous documents. You can't exactly remember where something is. You switch back to your name tab, everything's then sorted alphabetically, and you can find out where you are. But the other thing that I do that's really helpful and important, and let me see if I've got some I can show you here, is I use the notes feature quite a bit, not on everything. I will pull, I had some that here, we'll go look at this for a second. I know we're not necessarily talking about closing argument yet, but I had a bunch of documents that had actual notes about taking the case to redirect. You can see this on my screen. I can type notes in here and list either paragraphs in a contract or, whatever I might be using, and make notes about things that I want to call out in the particular document that I'm looking at. I do that same thing in a deposition, right? Look at paragraphs 6, 7, and 9, or walk through the witness through these particular paragraphs of the contract. That's really helpful. And the other thing that I'll do a lot is before a deposition, I'll take a page of something like this and I'll use the snapshot. Well, I might mark it up. So let's say I circle this, or I have a call out here. I can then create a snapshot of this and add it into the deposition so that I have the main document, and then I can walk the witness through maybe 3 or 4 snapshots where I've already pre-called something out and asked them about it and direct their attention to it. I find it's a very effective way to keep the deposition moving quickly. It's easier to orient somebody to a page of something. They may have the PDF in front of them, but they can also look on the screen and see where I'm, directing them. And then these are easy enough to clear out.
So while we're going down the path of transcript pad, will you show us how you use issue codes, especially the way you code by scene or chronology?
Yeah, one of the things all of us trial lawyers do to some extent is rely on chronologies. Here's, by the way, is an example of a document that's got key doc notes, or it might have document notes as well, so I can pull those up while I'm examining something. This one here, by the way, sorry, I'll move over to transcript pad in just a second. But this is another thing that I've been able to do that helps with outlining. Is I can create a blank whiteboard document and just add notes in it. So instead of using a normal outline for my examination, I can see what the notes tell me and just work through my outline that way. But let's move over to transcript pad so I can show you what we're talking about. So one of the things all of us do to some extent is address chronological issues and how we look at a case from start to finish and where the facts fall in that chronology. I like to break the chronologies into what I call scenes. Maybe other people call them that as well, but I group things into logical breakpoints of what they might be. So we're going to look at this case. This involved our client was a co-founder of a company. He had his share stripped from him, so it's a control dispute over share ownership. So let's just pick one deposition, and I'll show you how the codes work. So here's how I do my issue codes. These bracketed numbers are the scenes. So scene one, this involved a cryptocurrency company. So scene one is the early draft of a crypto index. There was a company called BCM that made some purchases, and you see how I number them. This case had a pretty tricky chronology. That's why there's the decimal with the second number, because I was trying to organize things as best I could. I usually don't need to go to that granular level. And frankly, most cases have probably 5 to 8 of these types of milestones. And one of the advantages that I've found using this when we're the plaintiff, I try to get one of my witnesses to be the lead witness, my starting witness in the trial, to walk through the entire set of milestones. So I'll say something like, Mr. Smith, this case involves, whatever it is, let's go through these things. On such and such date, you started this. On such and such date, you did this. And then create signposts for the jury. So then we go through the direct examination of him or her and any other witness. We can use those milestones to keep people oriented and within the timeline. TrialPad is fantastic for that, and it also creates a very useful analytical tool, which I'll show you in just a second. So that's the chronology. I tag these C's have to do with concepts. So concept, Bitcoin mining, I make those up as they go with the case. Sometimes you'll see there's a whole bunch of these. T's are things. W are witnesses, so I can find all my witnesses. So anything about Donnie McClurg would be here. Anything about Steve Lehman, anything about Brittany Keels, whoever it might be, I can find all this testimony that this witness said in this transcript. But what's phenomenal about TrialPad is I can go and see all the testimony among my witnesses, or I can back out to the beginning of the case and run a report. Let's just do a summary report for this because you don't need to see all the material from the transcript itself. But let's pick something. Let's go here. The BCM transfer. So I can click this, generate a report, and if I picked one, great, we'll see McClurg talked about this, Lisa Roth talked about it, John Sarson talked about it, and Rain Steinberg talked about it. So I could pick a particular meeting, an event, in transcript pad, and how long did that take? 4 seconds. Generate a report that's either a summary report like this or the actual transcript testimony, and I can see how every witness testified across the case about a particular subject.
Have you synchronized your own video?
Yes.
In the past?
Yes.
How easy to do is that? And what do you need to ask for from the court reporter or not to ask for?
So when we get with my court reporters, I have not had any issues with the video that they've provided. So I don't know. When we've gotten video, we get the raw, I think it's raw unmarked. You know what? Maybe you can speak to the technical part of that because I'm not entirely sure. All I know is in the video files that we've gotten, we've had no problem running the sync. Mm-hmm. I did get a court reporter give us some kind of pre-time coded video. I think that didn't work, and we had to get a different type of video. So I'm sorry if you want to speak to that. Go ahead. But I'll
just jump in real quick to clarify that. So if your video can run natively on the iPad, it can work within Transcript Pad as well as within TrialPad for presentation. It can sync up with the text file. So in terms of Transcript Pad, all that's needed is the text file from the court reporter and the video from the court reporter. MP4 is usually the format that everyone gets it in. That's what comes in. But if it's already been synced and you've paid the court reporter for that, that's actually not even something you can bring in. So it's save your money. Don't get it synced. And that might be what you're referring to with the time codes.
Yes.
Don't get it synced. Just ask for the text file and the video file. And all that syncing can be done pretty quickly and for free within Transcript Pad.
Excellent. So here, I'll use an example in this last case that we did. We had we had to show some video deposition testimony. So it's so easy to go into Transcript Pad, mark the testimony that you need, and then export it into Trial Pad, and then it plays. I may be able to play this here. I don't know if you can hear the sound, but it plays. Yeah, it won't play from here. But through the court systems, we've had no trouble. We've plugged in. The one thing that you have to do is make sure that you have sound output somewhere, so it'll output through the court speakers. When we tried this case in the Eastern District of New York, they had all that technology, so that wasn't a problem at all. But let me see if I can show you how easy it is to mark those designations. Let's see. Okay, so here is one of our witnesses. This is the one that we were just looking at, Jaraway. So with the deposition, you can see on here, let's see where I have this, plaintiff designations, you can see these designations that are marked, and all you do is take the particular parts of the testimony, mark them and add an issue code to them, and then you can, when you export the video, you choose the issue codes that you want to export as part of the video. So for this process, my opposing counsel and our office worked together on depo designations. So we had joint designations, not joint in the sense that we all agreed on the designations, but we had some, they had some. So I used Transcript Pad to mark all of those, and we did it collaboratively in that sense, and then we were able to play it from just from the iPad sitting at counsel table.
And from an attendee in the audience, how do you deal with editing out objections from depositions?
So those also, what we would do with those is, it obviously depends on how clean the record is itself, but there has not been any trouble. If you have an objection and the court's already ruled on those pre-trial, so let's say deposition objections are brought before the court, Your Honor, we don't want plaintiff bringing in these 5 questions because we objected to them. So we'll just exclude those from the designation. So I don't think I have any in this particular deposition to show, but let's say question is here and in between the answer there was an objection opposed. We just do 2 designations: the start of the question and then where the question was answered post objection. Again, if the objection were overruled.
And how do you decide what not to show the jury, even when the document feels important?
That's a very good question, and I think part of that goes to what your theory of the case is. So what I try to do is to think through what things does the jury need to know in order to find in our favor or to answer a question the other side might have raised that could look bad for us if it weren't addressed or whatever, right? What things answer questions that they have, and I try to focus on those kinds of things. And then beyond that, I think there's some judgment that goes into what you're selecting. But it's more than just this document speaks specifically to this element. It might speak to the element. It might fix some part of the chronology of the case. It may dispel some sort of thing the other side is saying, some point that they're trying to raise or argument that they're making. It might make an inference more or less likely. So I think about those things, and I try to call out the features of the document that address those points, if that makes sense.
No, it absolutely does. I have another question from an attendee. Why not just store all docs in Trial Pad? What additional use is Doc Review Pad? What additional tools does Doc Review Pad and other apps have that Trial Pad does not?
So Doc Review Pad, what I have found with Trial Pad is I don't necessarily want to clutter it with everything. I consider Trial Pad to be a true trial notebook, or in some ways you might think about it as a scrapbook. It is a collection of all the things that I think drive the case forward that I might want to, and it's not all just present this at trial. They are things that I might use in a motion hearing. the case calendar, things that I might need to use at a moment's notice. But I don't want every piece of correspondence or every document in TrialPad. If I search TrialPad in the middle of trial or a hearing or mediation, I want to know all the actionable documents that I need are there. The other thing is, if you're someone who really just wants everything all in one place, is Doc Review Pad and TrialPad will exist right on your system at the same time. So it's not hard to run an export immediately on the fly and get it into TrialPad. I've done that a number of times. But your question was more specifically about the tools that you have. One of the things that is powerful about Doc Review Pad is the ability to issue code and tag your documents. Let me collapse these out so that you can sort them into ways that you can do. I mean, you can create subfolders to your heart's content in TrialPad and organize your information that way. But it's far easier sitting down with a document and using, say, this speed review tab down here at the bottom, or and tagging the document for a variety of things. Like these are documents that were used or planned to be used in a direct examination of a witness, or might be, right? These documents that might be used in summation. The advantage to doing this is when you export them into TrialPad, TrialPad will automatically create folders for each of those issues that you've coded. That creates this consistency across the apps in the suite, allowing you to do whatever analysis you want to do in the documents, and then just pull in the ones that you want into TrialPad. But certainly you could just bring everything directly into TrialPad. It just becomes a little bit less easy to organize. And I think the tool set in Doc Review Pad, especially when you're making productions, right? It's easy to produce documents or export them. It doesn't just have to be a formal production. An export of documents that you might be doing to, in order to give to an expert witness or something along those lines.
And can you describe your workflow for receiving documents and getting them into Doc Review Pad or TrialPad, so that you can be sure that your iPad always has copies of all the documents in the case?
Yes. So what I do is any documents that there's two processes that we use. You won't be surprised when you hear these. The one has to do with when documents come in through email. So we get email that comes in with a bunch of documents. I will save those documents and immediately put them into Doc Review Pad, or I'll put them in a folder locally until I'm ready to get them in Doc Review Pad. But I'll mark them in some way that they'll go into Doc Review Pad. So everything that comes in, I put in. If we get a production from one of the other witnesses in the case, same thing. Once that production comes in, they'll get sucked into Doc Review Pad. If we have a case that's got a massive e-discovery situation, I don't put every document in e-discovery into TrialPad or Doc Review Pad,
Right.
except in one circumstance, but that was an outlier. Usually what happens is we use the review platform, the e-discovery review platform, to do the business that it's going to do. And then when we export a production set to opposing counsel or wherever that's going, I'll get a PDF version of that export and pull that into Doc Review Pad, and that's what I'll use. So it's still curated in that sense.
Oh, that was great. Yeah, a lot of prospective customers ask me, if I have an e-discovery platform at the law firm already, do I really need Doc Review Pad? And the answer is still yes, right?
Yeah, I wouldn't. I find distilling the documents down to the ones that matter, say out of the, you pull all the needles out of the haystack that is e-discovery, and then those are the documents that you want to do your trial and case analysis on to determine, liability, exposure, damages, all those kinds of things. And it's far easier to do that in Doc Review Pad. One just sort of simple reason is, you can be at, a hotel at a conference or in a coffee shop and pull up your iPad and be reviewing documents,
Yeah.
So and yes, I think you can log on to Relativity or whatever from, remotely and do those kinds of things. But you have this massive tool set in your e-discovery platform that aren't necessarily important while you're reviewing a document. You don't need
Right.
those kinds of bells and whistles. You need the lawyer's mind analyzing what the document means in terms of the case.
But having the documents does not slow down the system, right?
No, I had a document, and I'll use this case as an example. I had a case involving a CEO that was pushed out of his company. This was one that went to arbitration. We tried it remotely. We got a big data dump of e-discovery materials, I want to say 4 weeks before trial. And it was like 250,000 pages of materials. And all of that I pulled into Doc Review Pad, and I could search it without any difficulty. The one difficulty is with a document set that big, sometimes you get a lot of hits on a search. So trying to figure out ways to narrow it down sometimes was a bit of a challenge, but I would do the same things I'm advocating here. If I find a document that's important or relevant to a particular thing, I'd move it into another folder or issue code it so I could find it again easier later.
So when you go into the office, how are you opening up Doc Review Pad? Are you doing it on your iPad? How are you working? Are you working on your PC, your MacBook?
Almost
Which device?
exclusively on my iPad.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's great. And when you switch iPads, what's the best way to transfer the apps and all the documents?
So there's two things. If it's I don't have this type of setup, but if I had an iPad at home and one at the office, I would just use the iCloud file to do that. But assuming that you're working in a team environment, the best way is to just make a zip file of the case folder and either put it in, either share by email if the case is small enough, or put it in something like iCloud and give somebody the link so that they can download it. But it's very easy.
Oh, wonderful. Well, let's walk this back a little bit. During COVID, we all went fully remote, and I'm sure that you were very much ahead of the game with this. You recently handled a major arbitration entirely over Zoom using LitSuite for everything. Can you briefly show how you use TrialPad in a Zoom setting, especially AirPlay or screen sharing for evidence presentation?
Yeah, so because of the way I can't show you outside of my screen, so I can't but I can give you the steps of what I would do.
That'd be great.
So
Yeah.
typically what I'll do is I wouldn't use my iPad like I'm using here. We did that as an accommodation because we couldn't get the screen sharing going. But what I'd normally do is use my laptop or something else, conference room camera, to connect to the Zoom, and then I would share using AirPlay through my iPad. So the iPad connect to the AirPlay, and then TrialPad automatically goes into its output mode, so the screen's blank, and then we'd only share and in this particular case, the arbitrator gave us open screen sharing, so we were allowed to pull documents up. We didn't have to ask every time. So we'd pull the document up, and then he would get persnickety if we didn't take the document down, like cranky if we didn't take the document down fast enough when we were done examining on it. But, you pull up the document in the window. The only difference I would say between having a physical document in your hand is the witness will if the witness wants to read something, they may have to direct you to different pages to read. One of the things we've been experimenting with that is to create exhibit books using exhibit pad that we would distribute so that somebody has another iPad near them where they could just look at the documents themselves and go through them. There's some issues about doing that, so we haven't really tried it out yet, but it is one thing that you could do. But it didn't present any problems. We had complicated spreadsheets up on screen where a witness would say, go to tab such and such and direct us to this column A3 and look at those things. So you have some narration on the record about that stuff, but the process was very smooth. It's great to be able to do call outs and markup documents while you're talking about them. That's really convenient and to really focus people's eyes on the materials.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think you've said, presenting wirelessly whenever possible is a huge advantage. And I know that a lot of prospective customers ask me the same question. They're so used to having a trial tech come in with them and prepare with them and maybe a war room set up. Ultimately, at the end of the day, the attorney can't walk around the room and be in front of the jurors with a desktop computer or a laptop, but the iPad totally changed the game. Can you talk a little bit more about that flexibility, what that means to you?
Yeah, the one I will say one of the best things about the iPad is it doesn't have a clamshell screen that's blocking your view from people. You can, we're all used to holding notepads or index cards or whatever when we're talking to a group. You can hold your iPad the same way while you're talking to people, and it's completely, unobtrusive. So, and especially once you get comfortable using the controls, you can move around and navigate very smoothly. The jurors can see that you're doing that, or the judge. The judges like to see it too because it moves through the presentation quickly and smoothly. You call out the things that you want to call out quickly, and you don't have to wait for somebody else like a trial tech to be able to do those things for you. I love not having to use a trial tech, especially with this stuff. If I had to use trial director by myself, right, you can't try a case and be a master of these
Right.
complicated technological things. And, you may have clients that want that, and that's fine if you do, but I've been very pleased and fortunate to have clients that I've shown how this works and have been open to us using it this way. And every case I've tried, we've used since 2015. I've used trial pad and doc review pad and all. I don't think I used doc review pad on that first one. I don't know if it was out yet, but as soon as it came out, I adopted it and started using it, and it's been great.
We talk about jury perception a whole lot, and the jury perception of a dog and pony show might be that the client has deep pockets or what have you. What do you think their perception is when you walk out with an iPad?
It just, I think that the jurors feel like you're just talking to them like you normally would. It feels, like I said, it's unobtrusive in that sense. You're not calling attention to the tech.
Yeah.
You don't have wipes coming in PowerPoint that are, that are fancy to look at and 3D I mean, you might need a case that has 3D graphics. I'm not knocking that, but or criticizing
Sure.
that. But in terms of just being able to pull up documents, it's like you're having a regular conversation. That's obviously persuasive and all, but you don't have this sort of heaviness or glitz and glamour of the technology gets out of the way. I guess that's the best way to say it. And I think that's
Yeah.
really important.
Yes, absolutely. You can stop sharing your screen now
Sure.
if you'd like. For lawyers who are watching this, maybe they're considering going fully digital but haven't quite yet made the leap. Maybe they're a little nervous and anxious about being in control of everything. What would you tell them?
About what, having control of everything from top to
Yeah.
bottom?
Yeah, versus outsourcing and spending the money on having a trial tech prep with you and come with you to court.
Well, I think so. Here's where I think the advantages are. First of all, I think, look, let's be honest. Any sort of technical glitches are scary as heck to us because we don't want an impatient judge to cut us off or make things look bad because things aren't going very well. So that can be kind of scary. And outsourcing to a trial tech person may feel like, oh, this isn't really going to be a problem. I think the advantages that you get from something like this tool set is, first of all, like I said, I've used it in many trials. I've never had any problems except in one courtroom, and the judge himself told the jury, hey, it's not counsel's fault. And this was both lawyers, not just me. It said, it's not counsel for either side's fault. We have old tech in this courtroom, and handled it very gracefully, so we were able to get the stuff done that we needed to get done. But otherwise, I've had no trouble whatsoever using this, and the lack of intrusion from having, trying to get a trial tech to anticipate where I'm going or open documents the way that I want them to open is, it's so much better to have that fine-grained control over what you're doing. And it isn't, because the software is simple enough to use, it's not burdensome to do it.
Yeah. How do you think your corporate clients react when they see that you're prepared and presenting their case with an iPad? Do you think do they know that you're saving them a ton of money by not outsourcing and taking matters into your own hands?
Some understand that more than others. I think I had one trial, a fair use case, where I came in with the iPad, the other side had their trial person, and you could see, based on the army of people that they had to manage the tech, I think our client saw very well how expensive it was for them and how much it saved them on the case. But I think at that stage, clients are so concerned about prevailing on their claims. Budget is an important concern, but they may not always be thinking about it in the rational senses. But in the cool light of day, when they see you've saved whatever, $50,000, $75,000, I think that's a big difference.
Well, when a trial day ends, how do you reset for the next morning? Personal question.
So I don't reset until after the trial for the most part, like, but one of the things I like to do is I'll get together with my team and we'll have dinner and we'll debrief the day. We'll laugh at the things that we can laugh at. We'll hit ourselves in the forehead over the things that, boneheaded moves, usually me, not my teammates, but, and then we'll try to prep for whatever might be coming the next day. And, in my own sense of sort of experience about all of this, the days that are tough is voir dire when you're first talking to a bunch of human beings that know nothing about the case.
Yeah.
And then by the time you get to opening statement, you settle in a little bit more, and then you put on your case if you're the plaintiff. And then it's nerve wracking again once you've rested and the other side's putting on their case, and they're taking all their shots at you. And those are the times where, like, getting some perspective in the evening is always a nice thing to do.
We really appreciate you. And you've said that for every matter, you now have everything with you all the time. Your briefcase is only 2.5 inches wide. Getting through airport security without an issue. You can practice when you're offline, perhaps when you're in the airport or even on a flight. It's a very powerful way to practice law, and we hope that more people will join us in the future. So thank you, Tom, for
You're welcome. It's very awesome.
through
Hey,
how
can I
this
add
works.
two little just quick
We
things?
do have a couple questions if we can.
Oh,
No, let me
Yes.
say this first and then answer the questions, because I wanted to make this point. For anybody who hasn't tried this in a trial or a deposition and you want to, one thing that I did that was really helpful, and this is going to sound especially nerdy, but on some weekends, my wife and kids were gone. I'd set up my iPad and the Apple TV, and I wouldn't practice a cross-examination, but I would practice marking up documents and doing call outs. And when I first started doing call outs, I'd accidentally close them when I was just trying to move something around on them. So, but after you do that 5 or 6 times, you get used to what the process is. And then when you actually have to do it in the courtroom, it's not so nerve wracking. So I would say, just try it out. Practice at home, see how it looks and works for you, and you'll get a real good comfort level of it quickly. If you can use Outlook, you can use these apps without any trouble. All right. Your questions.
And I would say Outlook is harder.
Yeah, that's right. Right. If you can use Outlook, for sure you can
You
use
can
these.
use Outlook. You can do anything.
Yeah, that's right.
We had some questions in the chat of various phrasings, but about your tech stack. So like the iPad size. Then do you also have a Mac, or do you just work from iPad? And then I have a couple follow-ups from that as well.
So I'll work backwards just a little bit, just so we can cover it this way. My very last trial, I walked into the courtroom only with an iPad. We did have a USB hub that had a speaker output on it, so I had an iPad and a USB hub. In prior trials, I bring my iPad and my MacBook, and I have my MacBook usually with me. This was the first time I tried going 100% with nothing at my fingertips, except my iPad. In one of the things that will depend on the technology available in your courtroom, like in the Eastern District of New York, federal court, Central District of California, here in LA, there's lots of tools that you can connect right up at the podium. So in EDNY, I could literally just plug my iPad into the USB cable, and everything would show up on the screen. You'd see the black trial pad, output, when you click and present on screen. So that's all that I needed there. In some courtrooms that don't have the same tech stack, I would bring with me my iPad, an Apple TV, a projector if needed in the particular courtroom, and a speaker system. And often I wouldn't bring those in. I would have those rented and then sent in and set up. And then the iPad would connect to the Apple TV. Apple TV would project to the screen and play the sound. And that's not a complicated setup. I wish I would have brought it. I have a little box I think it was a box that had like power bars or something in it that I've converted to I bring this dumb orange box with me everywhere, and it's got USB cables and, any kind of backup things we might need in case things go bad.
I would love to see that dumb orange that you got in there.
I'll post a picture. You can send it around.
Thank you.
We have one more fresh in the chat from the chat, Andrea. Do you have a master document describing your template folder structure and template issue codes that you use to organize your cases?
I do.
I do.
Good answer.
Yeah. So one of the things I did once I created that, I created template cases in TrialPad and DocReviewPad that automatically have those folders built in. But if the follow-up question is, could we have them? Anybody who wants them, I'd be happy to share them with you and show you how I do them.
We have someone who we have a couple people saying, "Can you share it?" And can you share your master doc? We have
Yes, I'm happy to do it.
That's great. And yes, you can make template case files in all of our apps, which definitely makes it a lot faster. I think you answered how you use TrialPad at live proceedings, but we also had a question about call outs, notes. Are you using those presenter notes that are available? Do you use those?
Yes,
in TrialPad?
I was trying to pull some up when we were looking at one of my cases. Let me see if I can pull some up. Do you want me to go back on screen? I can show. Let me see where these are.
I'm sure our attendees, the number of people who are still in here, I'm sure if you wanted to keep going, you could keep going.
You could probably keep it going.
I don't mind if people are happy.
Haven't
I
lost
know.
anyone.
I know people have to get on with their lives. So, but let me see if I can share this back.
And do you use TrialPad for depositions as well? I'm answering a question.
I do. I do. There's one. Is this sharing now?
Yes.
Okay. So the deposition thing has been a little bit strange because some deposition vendors do things different ways. So we have one vendor that wants all the PDFs just sent to them, and then they will share them on screen. Some people allow you to do screen sharing with transcript pad or trial pad or whatever. So you have to kind of go with the flow a little bit with that. But I have used it, and I haven't had any trouble, doing so. There was one thing, and this might also be something to keep in mind, is have it in your backup tech stack. My office at one point changed a bunch of our security structures, and the screen sharing within my office wouldn't actually work. I couldn't share from my iPad to Wi-Fi, so I got one of those Eero routers, and I'd connect to the Eero router and use the Eero router on Zoom. It sounds complicated. It was like a two-step process, but that's why I say test these things out as much as you can to find out what works in your office so you're not surprised. So here's an example. So let me show you. This is an example of how I use TrialPad in a closing argument. One of the things that was big, the film infringement case. I had this section. One of the things that I wanted to do on my closing argument was dispel myths. So I had this folder called Dispelling Myths. All the titles of these folders are arguments that my opponent used. So for this closing argument, I had almost no notes. Everything that I had was in TrialPad. I had my notes. What I do is can you see this slide overview here?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I keep my actual outline in Microsoft Word or wherever in an outline on the side, so I can scroll through. And it doesn't show on screen if you're using TrialPad. So I can have this over the TrialPad window and go through my direct exam this way. Make notes if I have to make notes. Slide it off screen if I need to. But on this particular thing, I made my closing argument as detailed as possible right within TrialPad. So I'd have these, no widespread partnership talk. That was an issue in the case. And then I went through the documents that were useful there. And you'll see here, now some of these aren't like detailed notes, but you can see in the notes, again, this was all presented in trial, so nothing secret here. But I had notes to raise. For me, these are just sort of keynotes to get my, remember certain things that I wanted to say rather than quotes. But I've had in some documents or some notes where I'll actually quote text from a case or something that I want to point out while I'm going through the document. I may have one that has meatier notes in here. I'll make notes about whether I want to use something this is one I showed you before. This is just a blank document that I put in just so that I could put this note here and make that note as I was going through the organization. Mm-hmm. And I didn't show you this way, but here, let me find one that's got more stuff. I use this custom button to organize the documents in the way that I want to present them.
That is awesome. And do you do depos over Zoom frequently?
Yeah, almost all over Zoom these days. I was going to show you one more here. Yes, almost all over Zoom. One thing I would like to try in the next in-person deposition that we have, and some people are asking for in-person depositions now. is I want to use exhibit pad to give an exhibit pad case file to all the people in the room, or maybe use trial pad, whichever it is, have all the documents in there. I would work from trial pad on my screen, but also have them be able to open up the documents in trial pad as well.
Is this a 13-inch iPad, by the way?
Oh, yeah, somebody asked that question. I'm sorry. Yes, I use a 13-inch.
And do you ever find storage an issue? I think you mentioned using iCloud Drive. Do you ever find storage to be an issue?
So no, I have not found storage to be a problem. One of the things that I did was for my iPad, I got the 2 terabyte size, and I've never even come close to a terabyte of data on here. And I've had some media intensive cases where the case files are in the, I don't know if I've had anything over 50 gigabytes, but I've had some big case files. And then sometimes, I'll move those using a USB drive if I've got to move them from my iPad to my Mac fast. That's very quick and convenient.
And just for the people who are joining, whatever size all of your files are outside of LitSuite, once they're in one of our case files, they're much smaller. So it's not a one-to-one relationship with file size. So it's definitely going to take up less space.
Yeah, like I said, I've never had any particular issues with the size of anything. One other thing to show just while I'm thinking about it, because we were talking about notes, is during an examination, if we highlight certain things in a document, I can then pull those I can create a snapshot of it and then save it for closing argument. So while I'm in the middle of an examination, I may press this snapshot button, take a snapshot, and I'll go organize it later on. But it's there, it's there when you need it.
That's awesome. And you're going to love the new improvements to the whiteboard that are coming.
Yeah, I saw that there were some whiteboard improvements, so I am very excited about those. The whiteboard is a great feature to use in a lot of cases.
Do you ever use an Apple Pencil when you're to take notes in Doc Review Pad or anything?
Yeah, since you added the one of the features I was dying for was to have more freeform markup, I have started using it, but I haven't used it hardcore in anything yet.
When you're driving in LA, do you ever use the Apple CarPlay transcript pad to listen to your deposition?
I have not, but I'm going to try it.
You have plenty of time, I hear. That's what they say.
Yeah. My wife's car is being repaired in Orange County, so I have a long drive when I go pick it up. So maybe I will try listening to some transcripts that way.
All right, I think we've gotten one more. How did you mark exhibits with clerk and trial? So marking exhibits, are you using I'll let you answer that. How are you marking exhibits in trial?
So we do number one, when they get admitted, we use a triple redundancy system. Somebody at counsel table is making a list of all the exhibits that get marked. Whoever's doing the examination, me or somebody else on the trial team, will mark the exhibits in trial pad. Hopefully on the fly, but that's not always the case. Sometimes we'll sit down and then go mark. And then afterwards we'll sync up with opposing counsel and the court clerk. And usually every day at the end of the day, somebody will go up with the clerk and mark them. In this federal trial in EDNY, the court's deputy was so good at keeping track of what was admitted or not. His was going to be the master list anyway, but we never had any issues with those being captured correctly.
Awesome. All right. I think we have covered all of the questions so far. That was incredible. Thanks for
Yeah, it was.
your time.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Hopefully it's helpful. All right. Good luck, everybody.
Thank you very much, Tom. Tom, we've had a number of requests for your master list sort of template.
Sure.
And if there's a way that we can kind of share that out in follow-up tomorrow, we usually send up a follow-up email. We can delay it a little. If you don't mind sharing it and allowing us to use it, we'll put a link up for everybody to access it.
Hey, I learned this stuff all from somebody else too, so I don't mind sharing what I got.
Really appreciate it. Yeah, and thanks so
Bye.
much for answering all the questions. Take care.
Absolutely. All right,
Bye,
take care.
everybody.
Take care. Thank you.